Right. So we are going to start class soon. Topic for today is Cybersecurity 101, Cybersecurity Fundamentals. All right. So what we're going to cover for Cybersecurity 101. So this is the topics that we're going to touch on. Right. We're going to talk about cybercrime trend. And then hopefully from cybercrime trend, you're able to see the importance of cybersecurity. Right. Thereafter, we're going to talk about some cybersecurity concepts. We're going to touch on CIA. CIA is basically about confidentiality, integrity, as well as availability. We're going to understand that a little bit more later. I'm also going to take a look at 7 security domains and some types of threat actors. And we also hopefully would cover about securing organizations. We end with a little bit of quiz. So that's what we're going to cover for today's lesson on Cybersecurity 101. So without further ado, let's look at cybercrime trend. Okay, so for cybercrime is on the rise. It's on the rise. So this data is very much Singapore specific, but talking about global crime or cybercrime trend is on the rise, partly because cybercrime or IT itself is much prevalent in our daily lives, right? Whatever we do, most of the things would now require IT, one way or another. So that leads to the increase in cybercrime or the opportunity for criminals to abuse IT, of course, much greater. So that's contribute to one of the rising one of the factor with respect to the rising crime trend. All right. As I said, this is very much a Singapore specific, but globally also is the same. Okay. So some types of cybercrime. The popular one will of course be ransomware and scams, right? Cyber extortions, loan scams, website defacement. So these are some of the cybercrime or popular cybercrimes that happens in Singapore. But more important is to understand the cause of cybercrime. Knowing that cybercrime is rising is one thing, but what does that leads to, right? So basically, if cybercrime is increasing, so that means if you run a business and if your business gets compromised by cyber criminals, cyber criminals hacks into your network organizations, then you tend to lose customer confidence of your product as well as your services, right? So this would definitely affect your bottom line, your profit margin, right? Because with lesser consumer, you get lesser revenue. That turns out to be a lesser bottom line, lesser profits, right? Of course, another aspect of cybercrime cause of it is that cyber criminals able to infiltrate into your organizations, and they can able to actually steal your IP, intellectual property. Basically what that means. So that means you lose your competitive advantage over your competitors. All right. So so if you are running a business again, these are some of the things that can happen to you if your networks is not properly secured. All right. You lose customer confidence, lose customers basically, and your IP also can get stolen, and that eventually erodes your competitive advantage as well as at the end of the day can also lead to financial losses. Of course, that's what I'm going to cover later also. We talk about cyber criminal and nation state actors. These are threat to national defense. All right. So because if I can relate to a quick incident, I hope you still remember a couple of years back where our Prime Minister's health data is actually being compromised. Okay. So that is actually threat to national defense, right? Because if your personal identifiable informations get stolen, a lot of things can happen from there. All right, and talk about leader of a country, private identifiable information stolen. Yeah, I mean you can figure that one out yourself. What can happen thereafter? Okay, so on that note, I have some activities here. Maybe we can do some activities to understand about one aspect of cybercrime. That's basically about phishing, and it's quite common. That's why I thought this activity would be good for all to participate. Feel free to copy this link and you can join along. But what I'm going to do is that I'm going also to flash this link up, and then so that as a class we can participate in these activities. Okay. Let me know if you're not able to see this. Okay. Are you able to see this screen here? Let me make it a bit smaller. Are you able to see the screen? Can I have some feedback so that I know?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay, thanks. Okay, this is a phishing quiz. Okay, supposedly that you receive these messages. The thing is that, is this message a legit message or is it a phish message? Maybe what I can do is that I can poll the class, or maybe any one of you can participate, right? You can put in chat as well, whichever you feel comfortable. What do you think of this particular message? Is it a legit or is it a phish message? The message comes from Luke Johnson. To me, basically, I just create myself an account. So, and then this particular guy, Luke Johnson, shared to me a Word document. If I hover this particular Word document, you can see that there's a link at the bottom left of the screen pops out. Right? Let me try to make it bigger. Is it possible? Okay, this is the full screen I have. Okay, so if you see my mouse here, right? Look at where my mouse flowing through. I'm over to the bottom left corner of the screen. Observe this as I hover over the link, right? So as I hover over the link, you can see that there's drive-google.com, Luke Johnson. Apparently, Luke Johnson shared me this document, and it leads me to this particular URL locations. So, all right, open in doc also same link URL. So what do you guys think? Is this a phishing or is this a legit message? Feel free to speak through the mic, or you can just type it out in chat.
It's a phishing message as the URL is not a legitimate Google Drive URL.
Exactly. All right. So phishing, you are so right. Okay. So show me, as what it says here, drive-google.com. We all know drive.google.com, but not drive-google.com. These are two very different things altogether. So this is a phishing message or phishing emails. All right. There's about 8 of these exercises, but I'm not going to go through all 8. Right? We need to be mindful of time as well. But we try to cover as much as possible. All right. So this second message comes from a admin fax message, no reply efax.com. I'm not sure if you can see this clearly. Is it too big now? I hope not. Or is it too big? Okay. So you can see here, efax.com. Right? efax.com. EFACKS.com. All right. So let's take a look at the URL here. Click here to view the fax. And if you look at the URL on the bottom left corner, what do you observe? It's efax.hosting.com mailru382.co. Okay. So what do you think of this message of fax, or basically message? Is it a phish or is it a legit message?
It's a fish.
It's a phish. Let's give a try. You are right again. Okay. Show me. You want to practice on your own also? Yes, it comes from efax.com. But if you look at the URL, it ends with mailru.382.co. So this is a indicator, or strong indicator, if I can put so, that this is actually a phish email. All right. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, this is a very simple message here from TK to me. He says that, do you remember this photo? Let's take a look at this photo. For this photo, look at the URL again at the bottom left corner, drive.google.com. Does it end there? No, it's actually drive.google.com .download-photo.cytest.net. So this is a very big giveaway. So what do you think of this particular message? Do you think this is a fish or is it legit?
Fish.
Definitely it's a fish, right? Anyway, in any emails that we receive for any attachment, like for example, this one it asks you to open up this particular link. So for any attachment or link that they want you to open, you need to be extra careful. So it's good that you put this to practice, right? Because for any attachment, any link that you click on, it might be the start of your misery. Okay, if it turns out to be a virus, all right? So this is definitely a fish. All right, so good. All right, because show me, yes, because this is they try to trick you saying that the drive.google.com, but if you were to be more careful, it's actually drive.google.com drive. Eventually it ends with cytest.net. It does not end with drive.google.com, right? So this is definitely a fish message or email. There's 5 other exercises, but I think you can try it on your own. Maybe we can revisit this if you have time later. But for other 5 exercises, if you want to try it on your own, feel free to do so. Okay. What I'm going to do now is to continue with the slides because there's some more topics we need to cover. All right. So let's start activities. As I did mention earlier, why we like to do this activity, because phishing is one of the common ways or methods that cyber criminals use to steal your credentials. All right. So part of the cybercrime trend as well. So I think it's good that we are aware of all these phishing scams. All right. Okay, let's move on. So that's basically about cybercrime. Cybercrime is rising. So I hope from there we all can understand the importance of cybersecurity then, all right? Because you like not to fall prey to cyber criminals. Okay. But what are the means and ways that you can protect yourself as a cybersecurity professionals? Then we need to be aware of the tenets of cybersecurity. The 3 main concepts in cybersecurity where it's called confidentiality, integrity, as well as availability. All right. So for cybersecurity, there's importance that we keep data secret, confidential, so such that no one else other than authorized people are able to see that particular data. That's what it means by confidentiality. Integrity basically means that if you were to send message from one entity to another, from one sender to a receiver, whatever message that gets sent across must not be compromised. If you send A, you get A. You send B, you get B. Doesn't mean that you send A, you get B. You send B, you get A. In other words, whatever data that gets sent across, transmitted, it should not be modified. It should not be changed. It should not be updated. All right. What gets sent, that's what gets received. So integrity of data is intact. So that's basically what it means by integrity of the data. So as cybersecurity professionals, we also need to be aware of that. Not just the secrecy of the data, but the integrity of data is equally important. Another aspect of cybersecurity is availability. Because at the end of the day, we have so many systems running in operations. So as cybersecurity professionals, we need to ensure that these systems is able to run uncompromised, right? So the availability of data, availability of system is equally important as well. So these are the 3 important tenets in cybersecurity: confidentiality of the data, integrity of the data, as well as availability of the data. Now, how can we then achieve that? Well, some of the simple measures we can take for confidentiality of the data is that since we only allow authorized people to access those particular information, we can put multi-factor authentication. You want to access this data, then prove to me that you are authorized to be able to view this data or access this data. And what ways can we do that is to put in authentication measures. good that we can put on multi-factor, just not only single factor, just not only what that particular entity knows, username, password, but also what he has, what's in him, and so forth, right? So multi-factor authentication is one of the good measures to keep data confidential. Encryption as well, because once you encrypt this particular data, the data will remain secret. Even if it get compromised, the attacker will still not have the necessary key, secret key, to be able to view the data. All right, so these are some of the effective measures one can put in place to protect the confidentiality of the data. Integrity of data, one of the measures one can use is to apply hashing or cryptographic hash in form that if this particular data is sent from a sender to a receiver, the receiver need to receive the same data by checking the hash value of the data that this particular receiver receives. Ensure that this particular hash value is similar to the original, is not corrupted. It's corrupted, that means this particular data that gets sent across was also corrupted. Right. So another aspects of integrity is to talk about digital signatures, because at the end of the day, we need to know, is it that sender who sent me that data, or is it a spoof sender that sent me that data? So integrity of data also can be checked by who sent that particular data to you. All right, and that can be done to digital signatures. I talk about availability of data. Some of the measures you can put, of course, redundancy in the system, and you also back up the data. So these are some of the measures you can put to ensure data availability, right, to system redundancy as well as data backup or regular data backup. So that is a bit about the tenets in cybersecurity, confidentiality, integrity, availability, but that's basically much about concept-wise. Slightly more on practical aspects. Where are the necessary contact points that one need to be aware when we want to talk about protecting data, protecting assets? So cybersecurity domain is more practical aspects of how you can put in place cybersecurity control and measures. Okay, so we talk about in organizations, you have employees communicating either within organizations or across organizations. So in every organization, there will definitely be people, employees, and all these employees will need to be able to have physical access to the organizations, right? As well as inside organizations, so there can be data centers, sensitive locations, where also need to be protected, all right? And in organizations as well, apart from employees, there'll be computer systems, there's servers, laptops, workstations, and so forth. And inside all these computer systems, there'll be applications running. And what does these applications typically do? Well, they process data, and eventually they send data to the network, right, to be sent across to the receiver. Oh, sorry, to the receiver. Sender sent to receiver. So there's these 7 security domains that one can need to be aware of in order to be more practical in applying security across organizations, right? So what kind of measures that one can be placed, or control measures that one can put in these 7 security domains? So we talk about organizations. Security policy governance is some of the measures that you can put in place. All right, because with a security policy that you come up with and you put in place, this would be like a beacon for your employees to take as a guideline. What can be done, what cannot be done. Of course, for end users, they're very much susceptible to social engineering, human errors. So ways that you can put measures or countermeasures against the end users is to have regular security awareness training and educations. Right, so these are effective measures. They can educate end users, employees, what should be done, what should not be done. The phishing exercise earlier will be one of the good exercise. Okay, physical access, as I did mention earlier, in any organizations, you need to enter that organizations if you are the employee for that organizations. In fact, within the organizations, we have data centers where only authorized people are able to access that data centers. So with respect to that physical access, then you can put security controls such as CCTV cameras or biometric access. Not only what that employee knows as a password, but also what that employee has as a person, maybe a token card and so forth. Okay. Systems. So in an organization, there are many systems. All these systems need to be ensured that they are running the latest patches, automatic updates are being put in place. All these systems are basically hardened. Right. So these are some of the countermeasures that you can put in place on all these servers, workstation, desktops, laptops, and so forth. Applications that runs in the systems need to be ensured are not malwares. So you can do regular audit. You can do updates of your antivirus on your systems to ensure that you flush out all these unwanted applications. Networks, you can put proper network assets, security assets such as IDS, firewalls, IPS, so that your network traffics that flows through your organizations are free from malicious traffics. Right, and last but not least, your information data itself, you can protect that by encryptions, right, watermarking, steganography, and so forth. So these are some of the security control measures that you can put in place to better protect your cybersecurity domains. Right. Is there any questions so far? All's good? Okay, if all's good, let me move on to talk a little bit about threat actors then. Right, because at the end of the day, you know about all these cybersecurity, importance of cybersecurity, all the community integrity, availability, cybersecurity domain, all for what, right? So all because of these things here, the threat actors, the malicious guy. These malicious guys will try to compromise your system. That's why you need to understand everything that you need to know about cybersecurity because of threat actors. And we talk about threat actors, there are many different types of threat actors. Definitely there are nation states, organized criminals, terrorists, hackers, trusted insiders, and so forth. All with different motives, all target different things. All right. So nation state actors basically very much nation driven. Basically, they would know about economics, about military advantage over another nation, and so forth, right? And basically, they will target the critical infrastructure of that particular country or the IP that particular country has, right? Maybe you can have some nuclear theory secret whatsoever it is, all right? So nation state actors would target those highly valuable information. Okay. Of course, there's also organized crime. These are basically your cyber criminals, and they are definitely for profit. All right. And terrorists, they are for ideological causes because they believe in certain cause and they espouse such information. So they basically they have an ideology that they like to support, right? So these are basically terrorists and extremists. And of course, you have hackers and hacktivists, also almost the same like terrorists and extremists, but they are more terrorists and extremists are basically more of ideological violence, as opposed to hackers and activists. They are basically more of ideology. And hackers and hacktivists basically you talk about anonymous, and yeah, they would create attention or seek attention by website defacement, create news that's visible to their cause. All right. But for terrorists and extremists, it's very much more violence, okay, as opposed to just hackers and hacktivists. Trusted insiders, these are basically your disgruntled employees, discontented employees, right? Something that they feel they have been disadvantaged in the company, so they want to seek revenge. So their targets are basically the data in the company itself, for which they can sell to the competitors and so forth. All right, so a little bit of activity that we have here. I hope you all can participate. If you can like to put in the chat, feel free to do so. For nation state actors, what are their motivations? Based on, if you can see these boxes below, down here, the one that I'm circling with my mouse here, these are the motivations, right? So it's basically mix and match lah. Okay. So for nation states, what do you think their motivation would be? You can speak out to the speaker or you can type in the chat. I'm fine with either both. So what is the motivation for nation states actors?
Geopolitical.
Geopolitical. Thank you so much. Just very, very correct. Thanks, Sherman. All right, and thanks. Who said that just now earlier as well? Daniel. Yes, geopolitical. All right, it's more about political advantage over another nations. So it's geopolitical. Cyber criminals. What is their motivation?
Profit.
Yes, very right. Profit. Nothing other than that. Either they get paid to do so for, but they typically still cyber criminals, so they are after profit. Yeah, they are after profit. Hacktivists. These are your anonymous kind of group. What their motivation will be?
Ideological.
Correct. Ideological. They basically have certain causes that they really feel strongly about. So they like to get that causes known. So they would try by whatever means lah to get that attentions for what they are doing. Okay. So they are more for ideological causes that they support. How about terrorist groups?
Violence.
Yes, ideological violence. They are almost the same as I mentioned earlier in my slides, like hacktivists, anonymous, except that they are violent, right? They don't care for safety of others, basically. As anonymous, they tend to try to get attention by website defacement, create news that get attentions to what their causes are. But for terrorist group, they would use violence instead of just, website defacement to them is not sufficient enough. Okay, so that's basically terrorist group. Thrill seekers.
Satisfaction.
Yes, satisfactions. Right, it's more like bragging rights. It's more like trophy collections. Right, so they are basically thrill seekers. Right, so that they can put for I've done that, that kind of things. Bragging rights. Insider threats.
Discontent.
Yes, these are your disgruntled employees, right? They will see discontented for whatever reason that may be. Okay. So these are your threat actors, and the reason why we need to learn cybersecurity because of them. Okay. But let's move on to talk a little bit more about securing organization next, because apart from understanding the thing about importance of cybersecurity, all the different types of threat actors, all this that you learn, you need to apply it. And where do you apply it? You apply it in securing your organizations. Okay, so in organization, typically you have assets. All these things about your servers, computers, laptop, desktop, computer systems, whatever is, those are assets. And unfortunately for all assets, there tend to be vulnerabilities. All right, and since there are vulnerabilities, definitely all these threat actors would try to exploit that particular vulnerabilities. Okay, and all these results in risk to the organizations. So you can see the flow. In organization, there's assets, and all assets typically have vulnerabilities. And since the vulnerabilities, threat actors will be attracted to the vulnerabilities because they want to exploit it, and this would incur or results in risk to the organizations. Okay, and when you talk about risk, unfortunately, not all risks are equal. Some risks are more severe than another, depending on how easy it is to do the exploit, how vulnerable is that vulnerability. So there's a lot of risk level there. All right, and therefore, in securing organizations, you also need to understand about threats, vulnerabilities, and assets. Okay, and with this understanding, you can identify the risks, and from there you can categorize those particular risks, and those risks that are of extreme severity, these are the risks that you need to mitigate first. Because in organizations, you have so many assets, and sometimes you are also limited by resources. So that's why you need to categorize the risk. And the risk that's of higher severity or extreme severity, these are the risks you need to patch up, you need to mitigate first. And then follow up by all the other lower risk. So that is how you should apply a risk management in protecting or securing your organizations, right? Of course, talk about risk management is more depth than just this, which hopefully we can cover in future lessons. But as of now, Cybersecurity 101, just a good flavor or introductions about the importance of risk management or understanding about risk management in cybersecurity as well. Okay. So if I can summarize all that we have mentioned with all that topics that we mentioned, we talk about cybercrime trends rising, the different cybersecurity concepts about CIA, community integrity, availability. We also talk about cybersecurity domains. Then we painfully talk about different type of threat actors, and because of these guys, that's why we need to understand about cybersecurity and secure organizations against these threat actors. Is all because of a simple things that can be summarized as it takes many years for these guys. Of course, Stefan Nepo put 20 years to build a reputation, but a few minutes of cyber incident to ruin it. Okay, so I think is this quote by Stefan Nepo is very much applicable to what we like to understand about cybersecurity lah, with respect to the fundamental of cybersecurity. All right, so all the things that we have learned, understood, we apply, we must be diligent, right, in protecting all the assets that we have. Okay. Okay, so before end the lesson, I just like to have a quick quiz lah. Not many questions that I have, only just 2. Let's do this. Again, you can type in the chat or you can just say it out to the speaker or to your mic. First question I have is that cybersecurity consists of the processes, practices, and technologies designed to protect networks, computers, programs, and data from attack, damage, or unauthorized access. True or false?
True.
Sorry again? Who's that?
True.
Yes, fair, true, correct. Of course, right? Because this is basically all about cybersecurity, right? It's processes, practices, technologies that you learn is to protect all the assets that you need to protect. Okay. Now let's move on to the second question. Cyber attacks often result in substantial financial loss arising from theft of corporate information and loss of business or contract. I think there's a missing T at the end. Theft of financial information, theft of money, and disruption to trading, or all of the above. So which one is the correct answer for this?
All of the above.
All of the above, because all the above will definitely result in financial losses. Because at the end of the day, when we talk about exploits, breaches, all this, at the end of the day, there will be results in financial losses. Okay. All right. So I think that's the end of the lessons for these sessions that we have. Before I end this lesson, is there any questions, clarifications that you all have? Okay, if not, then thanks so much for your time. I see you in class next lesson. All right, so take care. Have a good day. Take care of yourself. All right, bye-bye. See you guys.